Hi there. Welcome back to 8 p.m. Sleep Stories. I'm Joshua, the voice behind tonight's story. And tonight, I'll be here with you as we slowly settle in for the night. And if this is your first time here, I hope tonight's story and the sound of my voice help you relax and gently drift into sleep. And if you enjoy these quiet stories, you're always welcome to subscribe or leave a comment below. It truly helps support the channel and allows me to keep creating more stories for you. Before we begin, just take a moment to settle in, allowing your body to feel supported and at ease. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere else you need to be, just this quiet moment. And now, very gently, our story begins. Far beyond the northern valleys, hidden between quiet mountains and dark cedar forests, there rested a village beside a long black lake where mist drifted slowly across the water every evening. The villagers called it Lantern Lake. During the day, the lake appeared calm and peaceful beneath pale mountain skies. Small fishing boats rested quietly beside wooden docks, while narrow stone roads curved gently between warm cottages filled with the smell of bread, cedar smoke, and drying herbs. But at night, the lake became something entirely different, especially during late autumn, when cold fog moved down from the mountains and covered the water beneath the moonlight. That was when the floating lanterns appeared. Hundreds of them, small golden lights drifting slowly across the dark surface of the lake, like fallen stars resting upon the water. No one remembered exactly when the tradition had first begun. The oldest villagers believed the lanterns protected the valley from the heavy mountain fog that sometimes settled across the roads for weeks at a time. Others believed the lights guided lost travelers safely home through the darkness. But most people no longer questioned the ritual. Each evening, just after sunset, the lantern keeper rowed quietly onto the lake and lit the floating lanterns one by one. Beneath the deepening night sky, and each morning before dawn, he returned alone. The lantern keeper's name was Elias. He lived in a small wooden cottage near the western shore, where tall cedar trees leaned gently above the water. His cottage stood slightly apart from the village beside a narrow dock, weathered smooth by many years of rain and cold wind. Warm light glowed softly behind his windows each evening, while smoke drifted slowly upward from the stone chimney into the mountain air. Elias had lived beside Lantern Lake for many years. Some villagers remembered him as a young fisherman long ago, before his hair turned silver and his hands became rough with age and cold weather. Now he spent his evenings preparing lanterns beside the shore, while most of the village settled quietly indoors for the night. That autumn evening, cold fog drifted slowly across the lake long before sunset. The mountains beyond the water had already disappeared behind pale silver mist, while the final traces of daylight faded softly above the valley. Inside his cottage, Elias moved quietly between wooden shelves lined with lantern glass, small oil bottles, and bundles of cedar wick tied carefully with thin rope. The room smelled of warm wood, lake water, and lamp oil. A fire crackled softly inside the stone fireplace, while shadows drifted slowly across the ceiling overhead. Elias prepared the lanterns carefully. Each one was made from thin cedar wood and small panes of amber glass that glowed warmly once lit. He inspected every wick slowly before placing the finished lanterns into shallow wooden crates near the doorway. Outside, evening bells rang softly from the village chapel across the lake. Night had arrived. Elias pulled on his heavy coat and lifted one of the lantern crates carefully into his arms. Cold air drifted through the doorway as he stepped outside toward the dock. The lake rested silently beneath thick fog. Only a faint silver moon remained visible high above the mist. His small wooden boat waited quietly beside the shore. The sides of the boat had grown dark with age and rainwater, yet Elias cared for it carefully each season. The lantern keeper rested the crates gently inside before untangling the rope tied to the dock. Then, without hurry, he stepped into the boat and pushed slowly away from the shore. The water barely made a sound. Soft ripples spread gently behind the boat as Elias rowed quietly into the darkness. The village lights glowed faintly through the fog behind him. Ahead, only mist and black water remained. Elias had crossed the lake so many times that he no longer needed landmarks to guide him. The rhythm of the water itself had become familiar over the years. The movement of the current, the sound of distant waves touching hidden rocks beneath the fog, the slow breathing silence of the lake at night. He rowed carefully toward the center of the water. Then he stopped. For a long moment, the boat drifted silently beneath the mist, while cold mountain air moved softly across the lake. Elias reached into the crate beside him and lifted the first lantern. Warm golden light flickered gently behind the amber glass. As he lit the wick with a small match, protected carefully against the wind, then he lowered the lantern onto the water. The little light drifted slowly away from the boat. Its reflection shimmered softly across the dark lake beneath the fog. Elias watched quietly until the lantern disappeared deeper into the mist. Then he lit another and another. Slowly, the floating lights spread outward across the lake like tiny stars carried gently through darkness. The deeper Elias traveled into the fog, the more lanterns appeared behind him upon the water. Golden reflections drifted softly beside the boat, while pale mist moved quietly between the floating lights. Far above, the moon glowed faintly behind clouds and mountain fog. Hours passed slowly upon Lantern Lake. Elias continued rowing across the silent water, while lantern after lantern drifted outward into the darkness. Some floated peacefully beside hidden reeds near the shoreline. Others moved slowly toward the center of the lake, where the fog became thickest beneath the midnight sky. At times, the lantern keeper paused only to listen. Water touching wood, distant wind moving through unseen cedar trees, the soft creaking of the boat beneath shifting waves. The lake itself always seemed quieter after midnight, as though the entire valley had fallen asleep beneath the fog. Near the far eastern shore, an old bell tower rested alone beside the water. Long ago, before the newer village had been built beside the western hills, people once lived there beside the lake. Now only the old stone bell tower remained beneath cedar trees and climbing ivy. Elias guided the boat slowly toward the ruined dock nearby. Several floating lanterns already drifted quietly around the ancient stones. The bell tower disappeared partly into the mist overhead. For many years, Elias had stopped there each night before continuing across the deeper water. He tied the boat loosely beside the dock and stepped carefully onto the wet boards. Cold fog drifted through the trees surrounding the tower ruins, while moonlight shimmered faintly upon the lake behind him. Inside the tower, an old bronze bell still hung above cracked stone floors, covered with moss and fallen cedar leaves. Elias climbed the narrow stairway slowly. His lantern cast warm light across the ancient walls, while fog moved softly through broken windows overhead. At the top of the tower, he stopped beside the bell rope. For a moment, the old keeper simply looked out across the lake. Hundreds of floating lanterns glowed through the mist below, like distant stars resting upon black water. The sight never became ordinary to him, even after all these years. Then Elias pulled the bell rope gently once. The deep sound rolled slowly across the sleeping lake. Soft, low, peaceful. Far below, the floating lanterns continued drifting silently through the fog. Elias remained there for several quiet minutes before descending once more toward the boat. The deepest hour of night had arrived. Fog thickened heavily across the lake now. Some lanterns appeared only as distant golden blurs, moving softly through pale silver mist. Others drifted close enough for their warm reflections to shimmer clearly beside the boat. Elias rowed deeper into the fog. The world around him slowly disappeared. No mountains, no shoreline, only darkness, drifting mist, and floating lantern light remained. Yet the lantern keeper never seemed afraid upon the lake. He had spent too many years listening to its silence. The water had become almost like an old companion beside him through countless autumn nights. Somewhere far away, another bell echoed faintly through the fog. Elias closed his eyes briefly and listened. The sound faded slowly into silence once more. For a long while, he allowed the boat to drift freely beneath the lanterns, while cold mist touched the surface of the water around him. The floating lights moved gently through darkness, like quiet dreams crossing the lake. Then, little by little, the night began to change. The fog softened first. Then the eastern sky slowly turned pale grey beyond the mountains. Morning was approaching. One by one, the lantern flames began growing smaller as their oil slowly disappeared beneath the fading night. Some lights drifted quietly toward the reeds beside the shore. Others faded gently near the center of the lake, where mist still rested above the water. Elias turned the boat slowly back toward the western village. The first birds had already begun singing somewhere among the cedar trees beyond the shoreline. Soft morning light spread gradually across the mountains. Behind him, The final lanterns still glowed faintly through the thinning fog, like stars slowly disappearing before dawn. By the time Elias reached the dock beside his cottage, the village had already begun waking. Smoke rose from chimneys. Windows opened softly above the stone roads. The lake itself now appeared calm and silver beneath the pale morning sky. Elias tied the boat carefully beside the shore before carrying the empty lantern crates back toward the cottage. At the doorway, he paused briefly and looked once more across the water. The final floating lantern disappeared quietly into the morning mist. Then the old keeper stepped inside while the peaceful silence of Lantern Lake drifted gently beneath the waking mountains once more. And now, our story gently comes to an end. The night has grown quiet, and the world beyond your window feels a little softer now. If your eyes are becoming heavy, then simply rest here for a while and allow the music to carry you slowly towards sleep. These calm sounds were made to help your mind become still, your breathing slow and gentle, and your thoughts drift quietly into the dark. There is nothing more you need to think about tonight, nothing more to solve, nothing more to carry. And if you are still awake, do not worry. Some nights simply take a little longer. You do not need to force sleep to arrive. Just remain comfortable, remain calm, and let the quiet night move gently around you. And perhaps, if you would like another peaceful journey before sleep, there are more quiet stories waiting nearby. Another distant train moving softly through the midnight countryside. Another lighthouse glowing beside the sea. Another hidden path beneath the moonlight. But for now, let the day slowly fade away. Let your thoughts grow softer. Let the world become quiet around you once more. Tomorrow can wait until morning. Now rest, breathe slowly, and sleep.